When did you know, or did you feel that you were different?
I don't really know. I think I've just always been an only child, so I've kind of always marched to my own drum as such. So I haven't really felt different as such, but I was always very just on my path, even from a kid. I didn't really know what it meant, but I just knew that, oh, well, they do that, I do this, you know, and this is what I like to do, and so I'm going to do that.
So where did that first, I mean, different not being in a negative connotation, but in the sense that, you know, taking yourself from one place to another place, independent to what everyone else is doing around you,
yeah,
and then looking at the concept of having all this creativity inside of you, I'm assuming that to the normal person, that's kind of like...
Yeah, I think the only reason I felt different is because I realized that people didn't march to their own drums and didn't march or didn't do what they wanted to do. And I never really understood that, because I find like the little successes that I had in my life were when I really stuck to the thing that I believed in, or stuck into the activity that I was doing at the time. And that's the main difference really between...
So the music, where did that inspiration spark? Where did that?
So I was always, you know, performing in my room alone to my teddies. Singing, I always loved music. My dad played guitar. I kind of learnt a few things on guitar when I was young, made bands. I was in bands when I was a teenager, but I never really considered it to be a real career path. I just didn't have a concept of that thing could be possible anywhere else other than America. So when I moved to London, I was like, oh, I had no concept of London before I moved. So it was like when I got here, it was like, oh, okay, you know, this music thing is kind of 2 or 3 people away. You just have to do the work. It's pretty simple in that capacity. So I just started to do the work. Fell on my face loads of times, but just was more interested in doing the work than whatever came back. And you know, it led me to want to perfect my craft. So then I went to music school and just brushed up on all my music theory, so I didn't have to like fluff around these label meetings with people where I couldn't really communicate what I actually wanted to do. So I just learned how to do it, or communicate at least, and then just took it elsewhere, took it to America.
You've remained pretty independent. You have remained pretty independent. Tell me a bit about that decision, that thought process in retaining your independence.
So like the independence thing is a bit of a double, yeah, I mean there's so many aspects to it, but there was agendas, and the agenda was to not be under anyone else's agenda. So there was a time where I was getting a lot of interest, maybe because of the way that I looked, and I didn't want to, at the time I didn't want that to be the defining thing that, you know, got me a song. It would have led me into a song that, well, all the avenues at the time were leading me into songs that I just didn't really like anyway. So I was like, okay, so it's not that, and I don't really want to be at the mercy of whatever someone else at a label wants for me. So that was the first decision. And then I realized what it meant financially to be at a label. And like, although it's great and a big loan and there's like a good 2 years of stability depending on what they give you, it's just a big loan. And what do you do after that? It's like, especially nowadays, you kind of do all the work and pour your own creativity into it, and they take 80%. And I just don't know any other career that works like that. And they only pay you every 4 months, like quarterly. So I was just like, no, I'm okay. If I'm gonna be paid quarterly for songwriting, I'd rather just have at least 80% of that than, you know, the miscellaneous stuff.
You also mentioned the idea of doing what you feel, which in a lot of the decisions you've made, i.e. dancing, modeling, music, it's always, I mean, there's always a decision maker.
Yeah.
In all those kind of elements. And as you said, there are setbacks and failures. How have you dealt with the setbacks along the way?
Do you know what? I think the only thing in my favor with the setbacks is that I'm just really stubborn. My first word was no. So I was never, if I didn't want to do, like, for example, how can I phrase this? My first word was no. So if someone was saying, you can't do that, I would say, no, yes, I can do that, basically, or you can't have that. The childish thing carried on through into my adult life, where even when I fell flat on my face, it was like, this is not how it goes. Like, I am going to make this right. And that tenacity is pretty much the only thing that has carried me forward, I think. It's, you know, that classic thing of maybe it's not always about talent, but it's about the people who are determined. And to some degree, I wanted to brush up on my talent, but I think the thing that has served me so far is to just always trust the process and trust that I was doing what I believe that I should be doing for myself, not from society. So.
What does Lola Coca do?
I am a creative. So I am a musician. I make music, I record music, I perform music. I also do all of my creative visuals around it. When I say I do, it means I design or, you know, put in motion what visually that project or that show or whatever it might be. Whatever it looks like, I'm pretty much on top of that. And I also have a clothing business on the side as well, which is something that helped me sustain my independent record career.
What is the biggest lesson from Portsmouth, dancing, music, fashion, that you've learned on your journey so far?
The biggest lesson that I've learned is that